The air in the small room was thick with unspoken words. Seb leaned back in his chair, watching Blessing's face as she spoke. Her tone was low, almost hesitant, a stark contrast to her usual confident demeanor. "Was there a problem?" Seb asked, his brows furrowing. He wasn't used to seeing her like this. "Might be," she replied, her voice steady, but tinged with a hint of vulnerability. "You're from the upland. Your parents might not like me." Seb sat up straighter, his alarm turning into confusion. "What has that got to do with anything?" he asked. Blessing hesitated, her hands clasped tightly on her lap. Blessing explained the weight she carried, the invisible walls she could not escape. Though born and raised in the upland city of Igovia, she was still considered riverine, an identity that clung to her like a label she hadn't chosen. She spoke of the limitations, how she couldn't rise beyond a certain level at work, or lead in a community she had always called home. "They'd tell me to go back to Sombia," she said bitterly. Seb's jaw tightened. He had faced his own share of prejudice in England, where he had once been told to go back to the jungle. He understood the sting of being seen as an outsider, even in places where you had built a life. Yet Seb believed in something different, a vision of unity that transcended these divisions. "Don't be silly," he said finally, breaking the silence. "My parents accepted an English woman once. Why wouldn't they accept you?" Seb's thoughts wandered as Blessing looked at him expectantly. He reflected on the divisions he had seen all his life. In their country, identity was tied to geography: upland versus riverine, east versus west, north versus the south. These lines, sharpened by politics, dictated who you could be and what you could achieve. He thought of his neighborhood. Despite their differences, people lived side by side, sharing the same struggles, suffering, and pains. No electricity, poor healthcare, no schools, poor roads, and a lack of clean water. Yet, even in their shared despair, they clung to the comfort of tribal identity. Seb sighed. To him, the only identity that mattered was their shared humanity, their shared streets. He called it neighborhood nationalism, a unity born from shared experiences rather than inherited divisions, an ideal worth fighting for. Blessing's voice broke through his thoughts. "I love you," she said softly, leaning in to kiss him on the cheek. Her smile was radiant, her eyes full of hope. "You make me so happy. We should start planning our engagement party." Seb blinked, startled by the sudden shift in tone. "It's all right, Blessing, if that's what you want," he said cautiously, though his heart wasn't in it. Blessing clapped her hands together in delight. "I can't wait, darling," she said, beaming. Seb forced a smile, but his chest tightened. He didn't understand why she was always in such a hurry, why everything had to happen now. As Blessing talked excitedly about the engagement, Seb felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. He realized this wasn't about their love, not entirely. Jacinta's recent wedding to Chris had sparked something in Blessing, a desire to emulate, to show the world that she too could have the perfect relationship. Seb sighed deeply. He didn't have the heart to refuse her outright. Maybe agreeing to the planning would buy him some time, give him space to think. But deep down, he felt the weight of the expectations she placed on him, and it only added to his fatigue.